Good morning, everyone. Glad to be talking with you. This is Mike Doloff. I am the Chief Revenue Officer at Inflow Communications. I'm doing a quick conversation here with Travis Dillard, our President and CEO. Hello, Travis.
Good morning.
Just by way of quick introduction to Inflow, we work with unified communications and contact center technologies with mid-market and enterprise customers across the nation and across the globe. And we're going to be talking a little bit about unified communications as a service today, UCaaS for short. And that really is just sort of cloud PBX, right? Taking what was a prem phone system and having that in the cloud and dealing with that as an operational expense. Someone else's data centers and someone else is handling the dial tone, and you're paying a recurring cost or recurring cost for that. So let's get this thing started, Travis. When did you see UCaaS really start accelerating, and what do you attribute that acceleration to?
Well, obviously, it's been on all of our minds for the last half a decade, if not more. I would say we started seeing the fastest acceleration with UCaaS last year, or the last 18 months, I should say. We saw more customers looking at UCaaS, but not just more customers looking at UCaaS, a lot of larger mid to enterprise customers looking at UCaaS. They were traditionally staying snug with their premises-based systems. But to probably add some more context to that statement, just looking at our profit and loss, our revenue sources at Inflow, the revenue from new customers with hardware and software all but disappeared last year. I think we were less than a tenth of what we were the previous years. Obviously, hardware, software sales are still really strong with our existing customers that we have across the country with premises-based systems, but that was very indicative of what's happening in the market. There's a lot of reasons I attribute it to, but probably something that I see more and more is the fact that companies realize if you're coming to a junction and you need to make a decision on a technology stack as it pertains to your voice and your contact center, they realize that if you invest in a premises-based system, in essence, you're obsolete from day one because all of the innovation is happening, all the research and development is happening in the cloud. Companies, the right type of UCaaS providers are implementing APIs, and it's a true collaborative experience, and it's happened rapidly in the cloud as opposed to how would you get that level of innovation on-prem? More servers, more software, more complexity, and people are just realizing that's not pertinent anymore.
Yeah, I was trying to think if there's anything else to add to that. I think the only other thing I would say too is that you have a lot of companies that and this kind of ties into the next point, right? But you have a lot of companies that have invested in platforms that there's not a clear path forward on, right? And
sure.
So I think what surprised us, it was really sort of the rapidness of that shift. People have been talking about it for what, Travis? I've been in this space a long time, 5-7 years. People have been, cloud UC is coming, it's coming, but it's been a really slow, gradual process. 18 months ago, just
surprisingly slow.
Surprisingly slow. Yeah, people talk about what else has moved to the cloud. Look at CRMs and a lot of ERP systems and email and other sort of office productivity type of solutions. Those went to the cloud long ago, and that's a foregone conclusion that you're on the cloud for that already.
Sure.
You see very small adoption rate so far, right? But all of a sudden it changed really, really rapidly.
Overnight almost, feels like. On that note, how have you seen the competitive landscape change as a result of this?
Well, I think it's been really interesting, right? You've got sort of traditional players, if you will, right? Ones that come from a background of having a prem system and having that technology that have seen the writing on the wall coming, but they've been trying to figure out how do you pivot from being a hardware, one-time sale company to a recurring revenue company. And then you've also had this massive rise of players that were sort of born in the cloud, right? They started out only as a UC as a service platform. And so there's pros and cons to both of those worlds for them. But you have a ton of players that have risen up as kind of cloud native, competing against sort of this legacy, the legacy companies, right? That have a prem practice as well. And you have this kind of battle for power there. You have a lot of players in the mix. And then you also have this really interesting convergence of not traditional, what you'd consider sort of traditional UC as a service company, a lot of these technologies converging. I think a good example a lot of people are aware of would be like Zoom, right? Zoom has been a video player for a long time. Recently announced that they have, I don't know if it's called Zoom Voice, something like that, where it's kind of their basic cloud PBX capability. So they're sort of starting to branch beyond just video and collaboration, so that they're coming at UCaaS from a different angle than somebody that's coming at it from like say a Mitel that's got a really rich telephony cloud PBX background. And then you throw in other players that come at it completely from a different angle altogether. Like I think Travis, you've used the example of Zendesk before, right? They've added voice to with their ticketing system, but there's sort of this sort of blending of all these different technologies that can do similar things, come at it from different areas. And so, who was friendly 2 years ago between companies are now competitors, right? So that's how the competitive landscape has shifted. Everybody's sort of becoming a competitor in this space, which makes it really interesting for the customers and the options that companies have, but also makes it uncertain of what will shake out here, right?
Yeah, you know, if you're putting yourself in their shoes, they have a large subscribership, say Zendesk example, or a CRM platform, and it's turn on voice. Now we've just doubled or tripled our reoccurring revenue, and subsequent valuations increase. I mean, if I was to predict this, I would say a lot of that's going to shake out, because I personally feel that the true winners, and I might be jumping ahead here, but I feel like the true winners in the UCaaS space are going to be the ones that focus on being very good at what they do and having a very strong API set and integrate with others. So use Salesforce as an example. But it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. Well, so as you're out there talking with customers and companies that are evaluating this, what are the reasons you're hearing from them about why they're moving to UC as a service?
Yeah, well, I mean, I mentioned it earlier as far as, you know, day one, you're not competitive when it comes to a collaboration tool and or contact center with a premises-based system. In addition, though, when you're talking to people, CIOs and IT managers, especially with our strategic prospects and customers, their resources need to be freed up to be being strategic for their company, looking at APIs, looking at software, looking at other cloud applications that can help drive revenue and drive efficiencies and the customer experience. Obviously, is a huge one that everybody's talking about right now, as opposed to managing servers and patch cords and blinky lights and software. And when you look at it that way, it just makes a ton of sense, along with a lot of the other reasons that people are citing UCaaS. They like OpEx economic models, which oddly enough, initially people thought people were going to cloud, or people thought going to cloud would save them money. But if you look at a simple, you know, 3 to 7 year total cost of ownership, that's not the case at all with UCaaS and CCaaS.
Definitely. Yeah, I think some of the stuff I've seen too, just to build on what you said, Travis, is you've got some companies too that are shifting how they do business, right? They're trying to innovate. They need something that's more flexible and dynamic for them to do that. Whether it's something as simple as, we've run into this a lot post-recession, a lot of companies growing, and they're like, one of their limiting factors is actual space, right? Desk space. So you've got companies who are just like, hey, we need remote employee access to be quick and easy. And so these are reasons where they're like, hey, this makes sense. We don't have to be in this is easier for us to connect remote employees. We've got new tools and capabilities around engaging employees that might not be in the same physical space. And kind of in that same vein too, we've seen and heard conversations come up several times from customers of, they want to be able to offer, they want a different, it's a tough market for employers to find talent. And it's a good, it's a pretty booming economy right now, and you've got low unemployment. So you've got companies really competing for talent. And so we've actually, surprising to hear this, right? But companies who said, well, we need to offer better tools and technology to our employees. And when we're trying to recruit people, we want people to come in and be excited about what they have and see that, and that can differentiate us from our competition and attract new talent. And so they need different ways of engaging across the company, across departments differently than they have in the past, and they need to be able to do that more nimbly. And what they have today is holding them back, or they've cobbled together a lot of different disparate technologies that don't create a great employee experience, right? Because it's the opposite of a unified communications experience. It's 20 applications, and you're not sure who uses what. And so you sort of see a lot of these people wanting to actually invest in that employee experience because they have to. right? Because they have to find and retain talent. So I'd say those are some of the other reasons we're seeing that UCaaS really bubble up and rise.
Yeah, and to add color to that, right? You've got a millennial that's a knowledge worker that was raised on FaceTime and Twitter and other texting, and they show up for an interview and they see a dusty old Polycom or Nortel handset on the desk. It's actually embarrassing. And
we've had companies say that. Truly,
yeah, and
right?
strong candidates who are interviewing the company are asking, "What's your technology stack? What tools do you have?" And you better have a good answer for that, or you're gonna become obsolete very quickly. Just like you're gonna become obsolete with your customers. If you're not innovating the customer experience, you're gonna be obsolete with your employees if you're not innovating their experience. So, yeah, interesting. You know, Mike, with you and the sales team and our customer success, as you're out there and working with ops and as we're migrating customers to the cloud or talking to customers about moving to the cloud, what sort of downsides, gotchas, stumbling blocks are you seeing that customers are experiencing either as they're evaluating UCaaS or CCaaS and/or implementing and post-implementation?
Yeah, I think I touched on some of the points. One of them that's just a brief mention, but it's worth it, is pricing. You have some people who aren't aware of what the pricing model looks like and have an expectation of it being an immediate cost savings. That's generally not the case. I'd say less than 25% of the time there's an immediate sort of dollar for dollar hard cost savings for cloud. So sometimes there's a misexpectation there with a company looking at cloud UCaaS for that. Once you get beyond that, though, we've mentioned this too, it's a really, really crowded market for UCaaS players right now. So if you look, there are tons of options. Every telco, talk about this converging landscape, every telco that used to sling, POTS lines and T1s and things like that, right, has a cloud UC offering. It's their own baked one. It's usually a BroadSoft, or they're reselling even some of the other leading UCaaS players as well. So they're in the mix. You've got VARs and MSPs and agents selling, so lots of people selling, but then you have tons and tons of UCaaS manufacturers as well. So there's a lot of just noise. Yeah, really. How do you sift through that? How do you know who the top players are? What's really going on? Who's leading? Who's lagging? What direction's the company heading? You could spend, this is what we do for a living, and it's an enormous amount of work to stay on top of that. And if you're trying to come in and do a project on evaluating UC and UCaaS, good luck, because there's a lot of choices. So that's one of the things that's helping customers and companies cut through that noise is a big thing. A lot of companies can really get bogged down by, hey, we're evaluating 8 players, but those might be 8 that are completely fringe players, right? And so how do you know you're not doing that? That's one of the things. But kind of the biggest problem and gotcha that we find with people is fundamentally UC as a service providers are software companies, and that's what they're good at, and that's their core competency. That's what they should be good at. Let me qualify that. But when it comes to a migration to UC as a service, whether you're on one today and migrating to another, or going from prem to UC as a service, that's a disruptive project, and you want it to go well, and you want it to be something where you minimize the disruption, and yes, there will be some. So how do you minimize that? How do you make it a good experience for your customers, if you're in IT, your end users? How do you make it so that you get the benefit of what the marketing and sales people told you about how great this product would make your life? Most of these UCaaS providers, it's a complete afterthought around making that happen, right? They're software first. They're trying to compete against each other on this new mobility feature, this new integration. The thing that's come last has been professional services.
Yeah, well, operationally, it's an afterthought, but from a sales and marketing perspective, that's how they're trying to differentiate their platform. Which is,
we've seen that change in the last 12, because right, this arms race of feature function has become like pretty similar parity. So now they're talking about our support and our implementation process, because that's what else can they talk about, right?
Sure. Well, and you might have, you talk about how that plays into consolidation in the market space too. You might have a player that does a really good job with their software and their feature set, and does an okay job with implementation and support, because nobody's phenomenal at it. But they get rewarded by getting purchased, and then the customers get punished by making the right selection, because now the acquirer perhaps isn't investing in R&D in that stack. There's inevitably confusion and clunkiness with trying to integrate the companies. We've seen that in the carrier space for years.
Yeah, totally. So I think the implementation is something that is a big gotcha for people. The other thing on it, besides the UCaaS players largely not doing a tremendous job of that, there's also, I think, an underlying fundamental problem that expectations with a company making that transition, there's a decent amount of work you got to do. Porting of numbers and gathering of all that data. You know your call flow. You know your stakeholders that need to be involved, and making sure those are at the table. One of the reasons I think phone and UC projects have always been an interesting opportunity for either great success or great failure is because these aren't projects that happen every 2 to 3 years for companies generally. They're ones where in a person's, if they're in IT, you know, they're going to go through maybe a few of these, but it's not like every year. It's not that familiarity. So if you don't have somebody kind of setting expectations and helping you guide down that path, it's going to be a bit Wild West. And the problem is, this is such, if it's a mission critical part of your business, now you're disrupting something that disrupts the business, the productivity, your employees, and you get the opposite of what you expected. Nice tools and features, you get disruption and people angrily sending help desk tickets, right?
So first impressions.
And first impressions,
especially when it comes to technology migration.
Yep. So I think that's piece, and I think the last piece, and Travis, I'll have you speak to this, but I think just like implementation, the other thing we see is a gotcha. No one has really thought about the support element. Maybe you want to take that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think implementation and post-support or post-implementation services play into that. Again, we see customers that are on good platforms, good UCaaS, CCaaS platforms that are looking to make a change because they've been through a lot of pain, and that's because implementation and support are an afterthought. And you know, I think people underestimate. They feel like you can put your communications in the cloud, Fisher Price easy, it works, and you can go on about your day. But people underestimate the complexities. There's always been nuances with voice, and there always will be nuances, whether it's running on an application on a server or if it's in the cloud. And we see it. We see it especially with strategic customers that have either been through the pain of a failed UCaaS implementation or post-implementation experience, or we see it with strategic customers that get it and know that it's not that easy. And take inflows. We have managed services around UCaaS and CCaaS implementation. Strategic customers are willing to pay more for that, for the implementation and the ongoing managed services. So, people vote with their wallet, and it's indicative of what's happening in that space.
Yep. So just to wrap this up, where do you see this UCaaS acceleration happening, but where's it going from here?
Well, I alluded to it a little earlier. First of all, I think people aren't going to have a choice. I feel. I mean, all the valuations on Wall Street value reoccurring revenue-based companies. As a matter of fact, being a legacy player that has a robust cloud platform gets penalized with their valuations just by having a premises hardware-software play. And so I think all of the research and development, and we know that currently, is all going into the cloud. And I think you're going to see even some of these legacy players looking to divest some of their premises-based assets. And so I don't think customers are going to have a choice. I think they're going to have to move to the cloud. And a good example would be Salesforce.com, right? At some point, it's going to be a no-brainer, right? Of course, your communications are in the cloud because that's where all the innovation is, and that's how you integrate with other applications, and that's how you run your business. Look at Salesforce.com. No one, as far as I know, would even consider deploying a hardware-software-based on-site CRM system. Right? That's just, why would you do that? So I think the winners in this space are going to be the ones that are really good at what they do, like Salesforce.com in the CRM space, and have a very robust application API and the ability to interface with other players. And those are the ones that are going to win. I think, and maybe I'm biased this way, and this is our motto at Info, I think if you stand for everything, you stand for nothing. And I think you need to pick what you're going to be really good at and play well with others. And I think those that are adopting that philosophy are going to do really well.